Unleash the power of purpose with impactful business voices, hosted by Nancy Baki and Anita Larsen. Each week, you'll be inspired by stories from companies that are making a real difference in the world, and you'll learn practical tips on how to grow your business with an impact.
Hi, and welcome back to Impactful Business Voices. Thank you for being here. As you know, if you've been here before, or if you're new, every week we talk to a business owner that makes an impact in the world, in their communities, or in the lives of their clients. So we are here to find out what drives them and hope that it inspires you to make an impact in your own business as well. And we are your hosts. I'm Anita Larsen.
And I'm Nancy Baki, and very excited for today. Today we are being joined by Jay Delling. Awesome guy. He's here to talk to us about leadership. Oh my goodness, something that is so needed in this world to strengthen. He's going to talk to us, how he takes a transformative approach that fosters a safe, positive, and productive environment for teams out there. We are really looking forward to having an insightful conversation and discussion with him on how to really take advantage of natural talents to achieve goals, the power of the DISC assessments. For those that haven't heard about that, it's one of the most powerful assessments I've seen, and the journey of self-transformation in both professional and personal spheres. So Jay, welcome to the show.
I get a dose of you every day. I'm just going to record that. That'll be a continuous loop in my head. So thank you. It's an honor to be here with you too.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming. We are really excited to talk about leadership. As we kind of chatted before the show, it's so important. It's always a great topic that everyone in business can learn something from, whether you're a leader or you don't want to be a leader, but you still need to know how leaders function, right? To be able to navigate your work environment. So can we just kind of start with the basics, I guess? So maybe you can share with us like your overall philosophy and approach to leadership development using assessments, because that's a huge part of what you do. So can you give us some background on that?
Yeah. So when we initially come in and start working with a client, we want to find out kind of what their North Star is. And we do it through an assessment process. Most everybody out there probably knows what a DISC profile is. DISC has been around for many, many years. We've got the most recent edition of the DISC, which tells us how you prefer to behave from a natural style, right? Which is what we're used to in a DISC profile. But we can also measure the adaptive style. So in other words, when we feel like we're under a little pressure, maybe our boss is looking over our shoulder, sometimes we shift a little bit in our DISC. And so what the DISC really allows us to do is to tell us how you prefer to behave, right? And so there's four quadrants of it. There's the D, it's the decisive. These are driving, demanding people. And when we think of D's, we think of Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, Michael Jordan. These people are dominant, they're decisive, they're doers, right? And then there's the I, which is interactive. These people are persuasive, they're inspiring, they're sociable, right? We think of, well, we talked about Hillary Clinton being a D. Guess what her husband is? He's an I, right? And think about his... Yeah. Think about his time in office. I mean, think of how you want to think of him personally or politics. We're not going to get into that. But when you looked at his style of leadership, it was enthusiastic. It was very social, right? So you got Bill Clinton. You've got, I love comedy. So Steve Martin and Robin Williams are also high I's. These are social. They're enthusiastic. They're inspirational. And they're personable. Then you've got the S, and that stands for stabilizing. And these people make great coaches. They make great counselors. They make great Nancy's and Anitas, right? Great coaches, right? They're patient. They're good listeners. They're consistent. They're stable. And when we think about this particular quadrant, we think of the almighty, the all-time great Mother Teresa. She was the ultimate in that patience, that if you had an issue or a problem, man, you want a Mother Teresa in your life. And then there's the C, the cautious, right? These people are perfectionists. They're analyzers, they're careful, they're orderly, which isn't me, by the way, right? And so when we think about high C's, we think of Albert Einstein, we think of Martha Stewart, and we think of Bill Gates. And so these people are very compliant. They're very careful. They're very analytical. But what this allows us to do, ladies, is it allows us to look introspectively and see how we prefer to behave. So what quadrants do we fall in? So I've self-admitted that I'm a high I. I'm curious, Nancy and Anita, what you two are.
I'm a high IS.
I'm not. I honestly don't know what I am. I should know. The last one I took, and I was actually pulling out the report, and it doesn't tell me what I am. It says I'm a producer. What does that fall under?
I think you're decisive. I think you are decisive. And here's what makes your partnership work on this show is, Nancy's that interactive, right? She's so, and I've had enough conversations with Nancy. I just, I want to peel her off the ceiling, right? But I'm a high I, but I'm a little jealous, right? I want a part of what Nancy is.
Yes,
but
it's definitely
Anita, you, in your partnership, in your relationship, you are that yin to her yang, right? Because if both of you were the exact same styles, it would still be a great show. Don't get me wrong, but it would be a different show, right? You would be always going, oh God, I agree with Nancy. Oh, I agree with Anita. Everything she says. Oh, I agree. But the reality is, Anita brings a different perspective to the conversation than Nancy does. That's what makes this show work. That's what makes it so good.
I think that's what we've found. And I think I'm probably between a D and a S. And I think that's what we found, that we just complement each other really well. So I 100% agree with what you're saying here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Thanks for those compliments, Jay, by the way. Thank you. That's very sweet.
Really, because Nancy and I, because we're this high I, we're not as much task oriented. Because Anita, would you say you tasks are really important to you? Look at Nancy. Nancy's like, you nailed that one. Nancy's
like, Anita will take care of it.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
We were talking off the air. We were talking off the air earlier, and I do a podcast, and my producer is one of my business partners. He's a high D, and so he is task oriented. You know what? It's not that I can't do tasks. But when you think about the disc profile, like Nancy and I are high I's, so we're people oriented. We talk faster, we think faster, we do everything faster, right? Whereas Anita is a little bit more measured, which thank goodness for that, right? Because at the end of the day, we need D's, we need I's, we need S's, and we need C's. The key is to this whole scenario is understand which one you are, so you have a better understanding of kind of who you are, right? As I look at Anita, because again, Nancy and I have already had enough conversations. I know about you. Would you say, Anita, you're determined, you're competitive, you're responsible?
I would say probably not as competitive.
Yeah. Well, that's lower on the D scale. So you're probably a moderate to high D. And you talked about an S. You're probably a good listener, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a really good listener. And so you're somebody who Nancy and I can't wait to come to when we have something on our minds. I want to know what Anita thinks about this. Anita, hello, answer the bat phone. Let's talk.
And also, I also find that with the disc profile, what I really loved was how to interact with, for me, for example, the D's. that for me in the beginning, it was really tough. Really
If
tough,
I had a
but
hammer and
wow.
nail, if I had a hammer and nail, Nancy, I'd be tapping on it, because that's the next point. The first and foremost objective is to understand who you are, and don't apologize for who you are, because the world needs the three of us, right? The world just it's imbalanced when we all kind of stay in that lane. But the next component of this, and Nancy, you hit it on the head, is understand also who else is in the room, right? Understand that if I'm asked to be on a committee, and I look over at Anita, and she's a moderate high D, but she's also pretty high S, right? If I know that, then I can talk differently to her.
Yes.
Because now, Anita, if you were a really high C, let's say you're a perfectionist, you're just high analytics. Well, Nancy and I, if we're on the same committee, we would have to talk that language in order for you to be fulfilled on that committee, right? And unfortunately, too many times, people almost ignore the characteristics of that they are not.
I'm gonna have to go take a DISC assessment now, because I'm like, well, I'm also very analytical. So now I'm like, I don't know which. I know I'm not an I, but I don't know which of the other three I am.
Hey, you know what though? It very rarely happens, but sometimes I see profiles who are very balanced in all four, and that's a special person. And you're a lot closer to that than I can say for me and Nancy.
Yeah, I'm gonna have
Jay,
to take an assessment.
You talk a lot about, and I love the way that you use the words, but I want you to just share some context around, what do you mean by leading through servanthood? Meaning, how does it differ from traditional leadership models that are out there?
Yeah, great question. Thanks for that question, because I'm very passionate about that, which is one of our core values here at Canadas 3. When I think about a servant leader, I go back to what my definition is of leadership, which is, it is incumbent upon me, because it's my definition and this is how I choose to lead. It's incumbent upon me to provide a safe, positive, and productive environment so that others can use their natural gifts and talents to meet goals and objectives, right? And so when I think about servant leadership, if we were a team, right? And Anita's the team lead, right? Nancy and I are direct reports. My hope is that Anita creates this safe, positive, and productive environment. And when she does that, that's being a servant leader, because it's not about Anita. Anita cares so much about Nancy and Jay that she wants to create this world to where, Nancy, you and I are going to run through a brick wall for her. We're going to move mountains for her, because she is in the business of being a servant to us. Anita cares way more about you and I being successful than for her being successful. But there's a caveat to that. The harder she works at making you and I successful, it's only going to make her successful. It's going to fulfill her. Does that make sense?
Oh, it completely makes sense, because I know Anita for years, and she loves to help people with their success. So you're right on it, Jay. I love it. I love it. We even have here Catherine Lang. I love this woman. She took the disc a few years ago back in church. And hold on, let me go back. And was even across the board. My pastor told me that I was either lying or perfect. And I told him we had already covered which one I was. Thanks, Catherine.
So she's a D. Yeah. Catherine, we need you in our world, right? We need people to make decisive decisions, right? It's not that, Nancy, it's not that you and I can't be decisive.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that that's our subconscious is to be interactive, right? In a moment, you and I can totally be demanding, driving, forceful if we need to. Now, we can't sustain that because that's not really our DNA. But as good leaders, you and I can do that for a short period of time.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true, and I love what Catherine's saying, that a leader can't be successful without the success of those around them, and that's so true.
Yeah.
So what are some of the common challenges that leaders face in trying to create that positive and productive environment, and how do they overcome those challenges?
Yeah, one of the best ways that we've been able to kind of work around that, and that is a great question, and thanks for asking it. Because the most successful businesses are the ones that foster this safe, positive, and productive environment. And one of the ways they can do that is to make our direct reports feel like they're contributing to the success of the organization. And one of the ways we do this is through what we call a organizational healthcare check. We call it a cultural survey. It can be called an employee engagement survey. And in fact, interestingly enough, Hilton about 8 years ago was not very good at this. Today, they rank number 2 in the world as the best place to work. And that is quoted by their employees. Well, how did they get their employees to buy into that? First and foremost, about 7 years ago, their leadership decided to be servant. They decided to create a safe, positive, and productive environment. They wanted to hear from their people. So they did this employee engagement survey, and they found out what their people on the front lines, the boots on the ground, felt about their organization. Right now, what do you do with that? Right? Because a lot of companies will do a survey like that, and then they'll go, okay, well, that's good to know.
Exactly.
Pass the butter. Right?
Yeah.
But the good ones like Hilton, they really wanted to make a change. They wanted to make a behavioral change in their workforce to make it a great place to work, because we all know how much money it costs to replace an employee, right? Why do employees leave? Because they're not happy because of one reason or another. But what Hilton did 7 years ago was amazing. They asked their people to pinpoint where they need to be better at. And not only did they ask, they got the feedback, but they put an action plan together. And they made these changes. And then all of a sudden, the direct reports felt like they were being influencers, right? Now, just because I don't have a fancy title or my name on my office door, right? Sometimes people think if they don't have a title that they don't have a seat at the table, at the leadership table. And that's a myth, right? That's a misnomer that the three of us have to really charge forward and change. Because I tell businesses all the time, you go to your most entry-level position and ask them what's important to them at work.
Yeah.
How can I, as their CEO, help make their time at work more fulfilling? And when you do that, and then when you make those changes, that's when people move mountains for you.
Yes.
And so when you do that consistently, then your organization, it's not pulling all of a sudden like you felt like you used to. All of a sudden, you don't have to pull anymore. You look behind you and people are starting to join you, right? Side by side, saying, hey, let's go solve these problems together. I've got some ideas. You want to hear them? Absolutely. Because you've given them that safe, positive, and productive environment. So we're a big believer in hearing from our workforce, because the major good ideas come from deep into our organizations. Don't you two find that?
Oh,
It's
100%.
yeah, I think it's one of the biggest problems that we have out there.
Yeah.
I mean, that is one of the rays of the business challenges. And it's really understanding, Mr. Business Owner, open your eyes. Your employees are not content. What are you willing to do so that when they wake up, they are excited to come to work and not, oh my God, I'm going to see him again or see her again or whatever it is. It's like, why don't they? And it's having that passion of actually caring, right? You got two types of people, right? You got the one that said, I will do whatever I need to make sure that my employees, my vendors, my everybody who I deal with are so happy to see our company whenever they join us. Or
Anita, Nancy said it so well, and I think Anita is probably better at this than you and I, Nancy. But you said something very important. You said the word understanding and communicating and listening, and I think Anita is probably really good at this. But that's what Hilton did, right? Because there's two ways to listen, right? There's listening because I'm waiting for you to pause so that I can respond, right? So there's that listening to respond. Guilty. Right. And then there's listening to what? Understand.
Right.
Right. I think Anita's really good at this. That's what Hilton did. Right. They listened to their organization, not to respond, not to say, well, hey, you're saying we're not very good at this or that. Well, boy, you ought to try to live in my shoes for a day. Instead of listening to understand. Right. Because if somebody's making a statement that and you got to be vulnerable, right? When you ask these questions, you got to be vulnerable. You've got to accept whatever answer comes, right? And then you have to understand it, because if that perception is coming from this person, there's probably more people that have that same perception. And so, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that, Anita?
I think that nobody wants to be a worker bee and that alone. They want to feel like they're making an impact with the work that they do. And the only way they can feel that is if you, as a business owner, you share the goals of the business, you share how this employee is contributing to that and what their role is in the overall big picture. Share numbers, set goals, make them feel like they're a part of it. I think that's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked a lot about the role of DISC assessments. I love it. Can you go a little bit deeper, maybe understanding the team dynamic with the DISC? I know you talked about it again a little bit, but anything that you can bring out, maybe how to make that best use of the results you get from the assessments. Like you said earlier, some people, they just get it and then they just put it in a folder and then they close it and that's it. And it's something, again, needing to do it every year to also learn, what have we done? What can we get better?
Right. And that is such a great question, because this is a task, right? We want to complete the task, right? What's the end in mind? The end in mind is, if I take this assessment, I want to know how to apply it. I want to know how to understand it. I want to know what it means for me to take an action step to try to get the greatest value out of it as I can. So again, the DISC profile helps us to understand how we behave, right? Where do we fall in those 4 different quadrants? Well, our report, and it's based on the science of axiology, the Robert Hartman Institute, which is in Nashville, Tennessee. This is truly a science-based assessment, not only the DISC, but our values assessment and our attributes index, which the attributes index measures 78 core leadership attributes. But the DISC profile will spit out a report that will tell us what your top strengths are based on this DISC profile. It will also give us areas for continual improvement. It will also tell us what the perfect job climate is. It will also tell us how we prefer to be communicated to. And so the beauty of it is, and that's why it's kind of our baseline to all of our coaching, it's just a good starting spot to begin our coaching relationship, to take what their strengths are and even tighten those up, but to become self-aware on where we can improve, right? Because I mean, we never stay the same. We're either improving or we're decreasing, right? Very rarely are we ever just kind of treading water. And this assessment allows us to really peel the onion back on what we are great at and what areas of improvement will allow us to become a better leader, to be able to create that safe, positive, and productive environment.
Yeah. So when you say that, just kind of piggyback on that. So as a leader, and you're kind of going through this journey yourself of self-discovery.
Absolutely.
How do you use that to help develop your talents and growing the talent around you within your team?
Yeah. And so what we do there is figure out what the roles are of our team and what they do. I'm a big, job description guy, right? What is your role? What are your tasks? Let's marry that with our profile to find out how well we sit in those chairs, and figure out, okay, what are our strengths? Let's never ignore us. Use our strengths to build our opportunities based on what our role is, right? Let's say you're in the PEO industry, right? The professional employment organizations, right? You're in HR and benefits and and all that. And let's say you're the director of benefits, right? You want to know, are you a benefit specialist? Are you a benefit strategist? What is your role within that team? Find out what those tasks are, and let's marry it with what our profile says, to be able to lean on our strengths, right, to continue to fulfill our role. But let's look at that continuous improvement piece to find out how I can even continue to develop myself into my best self. And that's another critical part of a leader. As a leader, how good are you at developing others, and how good at you are leading others? Two totally separate entities. Development, I call development more mechanical, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I work for Anita, and she wants to know what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, right? And then she's going to utilize that to further develop my knowledge and skill in that particular area. Maybe I need some more training, right? Maybe I need a training piece on customer interaction, right? Maybe that's not my strong suit. So she's developing that within me. Leadership is all about emotion, right? Leadership is Anita looking at me, finding out kind of where I stand emotionally to the best of her ability, and build upon that, right? And so development and leadership are two totally different animals.
There are so many unconventional methods out there. Like I love how you said leadership is emotional. It really is. But people don't understand that. And they go out there and they Google leadership, and there's 1.8 million pages of absolutely nothing. Right. I mean, that's in our business too, right?
Like okay, I'll pick this one.
Yeah, it's like good luck when you go in there. You got the good, the bad, the ugly. You don't even know which one it is. And the poor owners, they're like, okay, I've got so many different choices. Let's just try this one. Doesn't work, and then doesn't work. They give it up. They lost time, money, right? So there's so many methods out there, and I know you've seen them. I've seen them. But specifically, we'll talk about leadership with what you do with your sense. They have led people to self-discovery, talent growth. I mean, that's what they're trying to do. What is your take on that? And how can you guide a business owner to not look at all these um, other ways that they do?
Right. Well, first of all, you got to be true. You got to be authentic, right? You got to be authentic to yourself. That's first and foremost. And then you've got to pick a direction that you feel like will best, again, create that safe, positive, and productive environment as best you can, so that you can get the most out of Anita, the most out of Nancy, the most out of Jay, right? We're all different. And so that leader has to be able to pivot, right? Has to be able to work differently with Anita, work differently with Nancy, work differently with Jay. They're all critical in the success of our business. So it's incumbent upon that leader to have fun with it, right? Jump in and find out what fulfills me in my role, what fulfills you, what fulfills Anita, right? And build it upon that. You got to be organized. I believe in SWOT analysis, right? And so find out what your strengths and weaknesses and opportunities and threats are, with not only within your organization, but under the organizational umbrella, your different business units. I do SWOTs all the time. In fact, I'm going to do one here in about 15 minutes with a business development leader in her own business unit. We're going to do a SWOT analysis so that she can peel back that onion on how her area can run as tight as it can and meet those goals and objectives.
Love it. So we have to be mindful of our time today. So we're going to stop it there and say thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for all the great compliments. I'm feeling good after this conversation.
Oh, yeah, that was wonderful.
So we're going to put you backstage.
Jay, thank you.
Yeah, we need you and Nancy to be who you are for this world to work, and for your business to work, for this podcast to work. That's what makes this an outstanding podcast. Thank you.
Well, we need you to keep creating leaders. So
yeah.
Yes, because without the leaders, we don't have good business out there, and we all have to create. I call it a big family, right? We've got to work together.
Right.
We're all good at something. That's what you're great at, and continue the awesome works and making great leaders just greater.
Thank you. You too. And I'm jotting down some notes as we speak as well. So thank you for that knowledge.
We'll come join you in a minute. We're going to put you backstage. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Whew, that was awesome. That was really great.
Conversation. Yeah.
You know what? I really do believe I took the disc about a year ago, maybe a year and 2-3 months. And I think it's really important that we go back and we, I got like a 35-40 pages of all the details that I'm going to go back to, because it's a very nice reminder, right? So let's talk about the nice takeaways that we got today.
Yeah, it's, I've taken so many different assessments, and I know I've done the disc, but it's so long ago, I don't remember the results. So I'm going to have to retake it. And also, as Jay said, we change, we develop, right? So
oh yes, if we want to, right?
Yes,
if we want to change, right? Because we always want to change, but if we put the work into it, then we will change. So yeah, go for it.
No, I was gonna say, and I'm sure the listeners realize this, that we have a conversation, of course, before the show and after the show. And sometimes I wish we could air some of the conversations that happen, because that's when a lot of golden nuggets come up. But we were talking before the show and talking about, it's so important for businesses today to have this type of leadership that creates a positive and safe environment and a great company culture.
Oh, yes.
And, in the 50s and 60s, that's not necessarily how it was. And as we were talking about that, I just started thinking, yes, we're talking professionally, but this is really leadership overall. It's our government, it's our parenting, it's everywhere. Any type of leadership. And if you look back to the 50s and 60s and see how all those areas have changed since then and where we are now, it's just interesting to see the common thread in that.
Yeah. The importance of knowing how to talk to others is, again, like you said, wherever we go, whether we're driving and we see the other person giving us the middle finger, or we open the door and somebody's not having a good day, to talking to a business owner that needs help and just is lost, whoever it is, or the guy that's, the guy who's outside, living on the streets, I'm talking about anybody. It's so important. Or kids, they're our future. So it's we have to listen to understand, and not be like the eyes a little bit, where we listen to just respond. And I'm definitely working on that a lot. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jay. It's a good reminder,
important.
right? And I don't take it as, oh my God, I'm so shy. No, listen, we got all things that we got to work on, and that's one of mine. So I'm definitely not shy
And I would say too, in the work environment or the times we're in today, where the last 4 or 5 years, our whole work environment has changed so greatly.
Yes.
I think this is a topic that's more important than ever, because one of the big things we always hear, as we talk to our clients and other business owners, is that they're having problems finding the right people. They're having problems hiring and retaining people. And a lot of times that's the time for you to sit down and be a little introspective and see what's going on in your company. Are you fostering that positive, safe environment where people want to stay in, or that they want to be a part of? What are you doing to attract those people and making this a place they want to come to and stay with?
And are you taking the time to understand how they think, what they're looking at, what are they suffering with, right? And really how to use that thick document that you get. How can you use it to improve what you do, what your company represents, how your employees think, feel? And it's a continual improvement, right? You don't just take it once and stop it. Like we just said, like, go back and look at this every 6 months to a year, and just make sure that you're on track of those positive changes that you're doing, right?
Can I end this with one quick thought, Nancy? Because I know we're tight on time today.
But
I just want to say, as business owners, if you are going to be a business owners, there is no time for pride and ego. You have to be open to feedback. You need to listen to your employees and outside sources, objective sources, because your business is your baby and you don't want to hear anything bad about your baby. But if you don't, then you can't improve on it. You have to be able to take constructive feedback and criticism. And as we mentioned earlier, most importantly, take action on it. Don't let it just sit there.
Yeah, that is key.
Yeah.
Glad that you ended it. That was an awesome note.
Yeah. So I just want to end with that. And now, as always, make sure you keep in touch with Nancy and myself to find out what else we have going on. Don't miss out on future episodes. You can find a copy of this recording, as always, on YouTube immediately. And
next week we're back with another awesome guest. Join us as we speak with Jennifer Anderson. She is the heart and soul behind First Responder Coaching. Incredible woman, incredible heart. Jennifer's been there, living a life of a police, an officer's wife for 15 years. And now she's using that experience to really help the first responders and their family deal with what life throws at them. Trust me, guys, there's a lot that we don't know. It's going to be a real talk about the ups and downs, how these heroes, what are they facing every day? So you don't want to miss it. Guys, until next week, go make an impact.
Thank you for listening to Impactful Business Voices. Subscribe now and don't miss an episode.